Welcome to today's Economic Insight. We are so glad you're here. My name is Caitlin Pusateri, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Greater Rockford Chamber of Commerce. And it is my pleasure to welcome the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago's team to Rockford. Thank you so much for coming. And a special welcome to President and CEO Austan Goolsbee for coming today to share your insight on the forces shaping our economy. So thank you so much for joining us today. I also want to take a brief moment to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to be a part of this important discussion. I'd like to thank our civic leaders and board of directors for their continued support and partnership, and a big thank you to the Rockford regional business community. You are exactly why we host events like this, to support you, champion you, advocate for you, and to help educate you. So I also want to recognize our sponsors who made today possible. So thank you to Illinois State Credit Union, our program sponsor. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you to one of our very favorite small businesses, Thayer Energy Solutions, who willingly provided your desserts today. So thank you so much. Thank you to Benson Stone, our supporting sponsor. And as always, thank you to Mindy Joy Photography, our photography sponsor, who always makes us look good. We are grateful to each and every one of you for your investment in events like this one. So in a moment, we are going to kind of jump right in, but really quick, before we do that, we need your input. So in 2025, we introduced the GRCC Quarterly Business Sentiment Survey to capture the pulse of our local business community and create an ongoing data set to tell the story of our regional economy. We conduct the survey each quarter with the help of Region 1 Planning Council. Working with R1, we've been able to translate this data into insights, finding patterns, seeing trends, and identifying opportunities to better serve you, our business community. So our Q2 2026 survey is currently open, and we want to give you a chance to share your input. On the back of your program, you'll see a QR code that will take you to the very brief survey. If you can, take a few minutes to take that survey today. We would so appreciate it. We think that the questions there help to spur some lively conversation back as you drive back to your offices today. So with that, today's a particularly exciting day to have Economic Insight as the monthly Consumer Price Index was released just this morning. And while Austan and Angela will get far more into that, we do know it ticked up slightly year over year. So this is one of the most watched data points nationally. It helps people understand the overall climate of the economy, from what they're paying at the grocery store to what it costs to run a business. The GRCC exists to connect, support, and elevate the Rockford regional business community, and bringing a conversation like this to our region is a perfect example of that mission in action. So we want Rockford to have a seat at the table when it comes to understanding the forces shaping the business and economic future. And today, you'll hear directly from one of the people at the center of it all. Austan Goolsbee, President and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. But first, leading today's conversation with Mr. Goolsbee is our very own CEO, Angela K. Larson. So a little bit about Angela. Angela has been a tireless champion for the Rockford region's business community, and there is no one better suited to guide this discussion on behalf of our business community. Angela spent most of her career in the manufacturing sector, serving as VP of Marketing for Woods Equipment Company, where she was responsible for product development, pricing optimization, channel strategy, and all aspects of promotion and corporate communication. In that role, she was part of the commercialization team, expanding the company into Brazil and Europe. She served as a board member and chairman of the board of German American State Bank for more than 12 years, and has also lent her business and strategy expertise to organizations in the manufacturing, healthcare, nonprofit, high-tech, agriculture, and construction sectors. She joined the GRCC in July of 2024 as CEO, and we're so glad she's here. So we can clap for that. That sounds nice. So right before we introduce Austan, a little bit about how today's going to work. As you listen to today's conversation, we encourage you to write down any questions you have on the question cards at the table. Our GRCC staff will circulate throughout the room to collect them, and Angela will make sure your questions are heard. We want this to be an interactive and valuable experience for everyone here, so don't be shy, but please be polite. There are no bad questions when it comes to understanding the economy. And now it is my honor to introduce today's featured guest, Austan Goolsbee. Austan Goolsbee is President and Chief Executive Officer of the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. In this capacity, he serves on the Federal Open Market Committee, the Federal Reserve System's monetary policy-making body, and leads the Chicago Fed, which conducts research and monitors local economic conditions in support of the formulation of monetary policy, supervises and regulates banking organizations, and provides financial services to banks and similar institutions, as well as to the U.S. government. Prior to becoming president of the Chicago Fed in January of 2023, President Goolsbee served as the Robert P. Gwynn Professor of Economics at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, where he first joined the faculty in 1995. He is known for his empirical research on many different industries and on economic policy. He has been a Fulbright Scholar and an Alfred P. Sloan Fellow. He served as a member and then chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors from 2009 through 2011 and was a member of President Obama's cabinet. He has also served on the Board of Education for the City of Chicago, the Economic Advisory Panel to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the Panel of Economic Advisors to the Congressional Budget Office, the U.S. Census Advisory Committee, the Digital Economy Board of Advisors to the Commerce Department, and the External Advisory Group on the Digital Technology for the International Monetary Fund. I think at some point he sleeps, but it doesn't say that here, so maybe not. Mr. Goolsbee has a PhD in economics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a bachelor's and master's in economics from Yale University. He is married and has 3 children. So please join me in welcoming both Austan and Angela to the stage.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Caitlin. This thing is on. Thank you, Caitlin. Welcome, everyone. We really appreciate you being here. It's pretty exciting to host Austan Goolsbee. Sorry.
It's a pleasure to be here. Am I on?
You're on.
I am.
You're on.
Okay.
So as we know, it's these opportunities to learn more about our economy, especially from an expert like Austan, is really an opportunity to think about our own businesses, about our community, and about the future of work here in the Rockford region. So as you all know, our region is built on grit and innovation and perseverance. A lot of that is our background as a manufacturing community. We talked a little bit about how, as a manufacturing community, we are a bellwether for the state, maybe even the Midwest and the country, because manufacturers react quickly to economic changes. With that, 20% of our regional workforce represents the manufacturing sector, and we know that many people in this room support the sector, are part of the sector, and represent many, many other businesses that make up the local economy. We're going to talk a lot today about some of the things that are affecting this current situation. We've got tariffs, we've got labor policy changes, workforce needs, war, turbulence. It's a really incredible time to be talking about the economy because there's so many external factors that are changing it day to day. So as Caitlin said, you all have a chance to ask questions. Those cards are on your table. Please write them as you go along. A member of the staff will grab them, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. So we'll get started with the fireside chat, and in a bit, we'll turn it over for questions. So first of all, many of the people in this room probably do not interact with the Federal Reserve Bank on a day-to-day basis. So start us off by giving us that primer on the bank.
Okay, that's a polite way to say, well, what do you do all day? Why does Chicago even have a Federal Reserve Bank? The Fed sets interest rate policies every 6 weeks in Washington, D.C. In 1913, they passed the Federal Reserve Act, and because people at that time, as today, were deeply uncomfortable with Washington, D.C. and the federal government controlling the entire financial system of the United States with no input from the rest of the country, they added 12 reserve banks spaced around the nation. The Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago is 90% of Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, so heart of the Midwest. There's some goofy aspects about how they distributed the banks. They needed the Speaker of the House was from Missouri and the head of the banking committee was from Missouri. So actually 2 of the 12 banks are in Missouri. There's Kansas City and St. Louis. But the overall idea that we should have a diverse regionally and people with diverse backgrounds sitting around the table when they're making those decisions has proved lasting and an important insight. The other things the Fed does, though, there are about a little less than 2,000 people work at Chicago Fed. We're a bank to the banks. The Federal Reserve System does the majority of the payments and the plumbing of the financial system, wire transfers, ACH, direct deposit, stuff like that. $6 trillion per day we're doing on those payments. All the cash in the economy is printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, but is distributed through the feds. And we have big vaults with giant 80,000-pound doors with billions and billions of dollars of cash that we run through the machines in and out every day to send to ATMs around the region. We oversee and supervise the banks. So we have a lot of bank examiners who are down checking to make sure that the banks have the capital they say they have, that they're following the consumer protection laws. And we're highly involved in the community and community engagement, development, as well as gathering business intelligence. And that's mostly what the Fed does. So when we come out to Rockford, I think your observation is exactly right. It's what I usually say about Chicago's district as heart of the Midwest is by far the most manufacturing of all the districts. And Rockford is more manufacturing than the most manufacturing district. And the thing about that is that manufacturing is one of the most cyclical industries. So begrudgingly, because there is a lot of rivalry between the different regions, begrudgingly, they will often ask, well, what are you seeing in Chicago? Precisely because that is a little bit of a leading indicator about the business cycle. So then you say, why am I in Rockford? Same reason. Same reason, really. And that maybe that introduces us to the whole list of whatever you're going to ask about. And I have the questions to you and to this audience because I want to know what are you seeing? What are we seeing on costs? What are we seeing on employment? What are we seeing on output growth and demand? Because you're one step ahead, of where the others are going.
Thanks. We like to think that, one step ahead. So
this is the chamber. You got that marketing thing. You're like one step ahead.
So let's talk a little bit more about the Fed, because you've had some interesting headlines in the past several weeks. And some people think that independence of the central bank is threatened. Kevin Warsh, right, just in the final rounds of getting approved as the chair, he actually said that he thought the Fed needed a good shaking up, right? A good family fight, I think were his words. Jerome Powell has chosen to stay on as he leaves the chairmanship. We saw the first dissent vote on interest rates was it in decades?
It was the most
dissent votes.
30-something years.
Yeah. And we keep hearing about the cost overruns on the remodeling. The sound bites, sound bites, sound bites. So what is the truth, and how threatened is the independence?
Let's take one step back. The Federal Reserve Act lays out a simple job, simple to understand but not simple to enact job to the Fed when setting monetary policy, which in our language is called the dual mandate. And the law says we are to maximize employment and stabilize prices. That's the job. The whole job and nothing but the job in monetary policy is that. The reason why, before I've been at the Fed, it's my 4th year. Before that, I was an economist for a long time at the University of Chicago. Economists are virtually unanimous on the importance of central bank independence, not just the Fed, in any country, that the sitting administration not be able to dictate to the central bank, here's what we want you to do with interest rates. And that's not just a theoretical. There have been many countries around the world at many times where they didn't have central bank independence. And what happens is exactly what you would think would happen. You get inflation comes roaring back, GDP growth is slower, the job market does worse because the short-run incentives differ from the long-run incentives. I don't think Fed independence is truly under threat, or maybe that's the wrong phrase. I don't think that it's going away. The people who sit around the table take the job extremely seriously. Regardless, there are people from different partisan backgrounds, different industry backgrounds. There's economists, there's business people, there's finance people. Everybody comes there in a way that is not, you're out of the elections business, you're out of anything but the dual mandate business of thinking through the economic conditions and what is warranted for setting a policy. And we're all just down there trying to figure it out. And I have an amazing research staff at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. Superb. The other reserve banks have excellent, not as good as ours, but pretty good research departments. And they're coming with these perspectives. If we were to take away Fed independence of this narrow form, all I'm talking about is independence from political interference in setting the interest rate, inflation will come roaring back. That is what happens if you do not have central bank independence. And it comes as no surprise to anyone in this room or anyone in the economic surveys. We have an inflation problem already in this country. People are identifying that their number one concern about the economy are prices and affordability. I guess that's the number 1 and 2 concern, but the prices and affordability. And so I just want us to, before we truly start dismantling the Fed independence that we have built over decades, let's just think what the consequences would be.
His research team, the lead is here today, and I just want everyone to know she now has a copy of the Chamber of Commerce Quarterly Business Sentiment Survey results, and we will be feeding those to her and her research team.
Filling out the survey right now.
I hope so. So the Consumer Price Index was released this morning.
Yes.
And a slight uptick, but what does it tell us about where inflation is headed?
Not much that's good is what it tells us. So the Fed has for many years now said there is a 2% inflation target. And if we want to really get in the weeds, it's not CPI. CPI is one measure of inflation. PCE is a different measure of inflation. It's 2% on PCE inflation. Fine. Think of it as 2%. We've been above 2% for 5 years now. That's not good. it was making progress. Then we stalled out around 3% inflation and stopped making progress. That was last year. We believed that a lot of that was from tariffs and so would not last, that would be a spike to prices, but then the inflation part would stop going up. Now, before that went away, we've added this oil price bit from the war, and not only are we not making progress, it's going the wrong way. And it's going the wrong way not just in oil-related things and not just in tariff-related things. Now you've seen drifting upward of services inflation. And I keep highlighting, for me, that's the part that I'm nervous about. I want to see that at least stop growing and hopefully start going back down, because that can't really be from oil prices. That's not really a big tariff component. So we need to keep an eye on that. The numbers today were mostly what was expected, but the unexpectedly disappointing part, in my mind, was on the services side. You continue to see this services going up.
And I believe energy overall was higher as well.
Energy is way up. It would drive my mom crazy. It'd probably drive everyone in this room crazy to know that when the Fed sets the interest rate, we mostly look at what we call core inflation, which means take the inflation and take out food and take out energy. And then at that point, my mom's like, what do you mean take out food and energy? That's exactly what I want to pay attention to. The reason we take that out is because those ones are up and down a lot. And so they don't give you as good of a sense of what's the through line. That we saw very dramatic energy inflation was expected. That's why the headline number was as bad as it was. But I wouldn't overreact to that. If we will indeed, if this conflict in the Middle East and the implications for oil prices do indeed prove to be passing, that should come down just as fast as it went up.
One of the biggest investments that a consumer makes is in their home. And the city of Rockford did a housing study and identified that we needed 3,000 to 9,000 new units by 2030. So, and this is a crisis that is, I hate calling it a crisis. A lot of people are referring to it as the housing crisis across the country.
Yes.
There's so many elements that go into it, but what do you think it will take to address housing affordability and availability?
This is an issue in Rockford. You were, by some measure, the hottest housing market in the entire country.
According to Zillow, and in the top 20 by the Wall Street Journal.
Okay, so the thing about being a hot housing market is that's good and it's bad at the same time. Because on one hand, you're like, yeah, there's a lot of demand. On the other hand, if it means prices are going to go up for housing, that can block out new families trying to get in. It can make it hard to hire people. It's not just in Silicon Valley or in New York City that housing affordability is an issue. When we travel around, if I come out and start talking to you about your businesses, we're very likely to hear. A couple months ago, we went to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Not a huge urban center, not a big metro area. I asked, what is the number one problem facing Cedar Rapids? They said, the cost of housing. We can't attract workers to come here because they can't afford the housing. We must build more housing. First of all, maybe it's overly simplistic economist in me. You want the price to go down, you either got to reduce demand or increase supply. The demand is not reducing, you got to build more houses. Therein lies the complications that are coming from the cost of building materials are up, the cost of the cost of fuel is up, the cost of labor in the construction sector is up, and so it's not as cheap to build as it was in the past. And the time it takes to build out these units, you said that sounded like almost 10,000 units just for Rockford City, Rockford area. I don't know. That's a lot of units. It's not going to, you can't build 10,000 new units in a 3-month period. So we're grappling with, throughout the region and throughout the country, with this issue that there's a disconnect between the supply of housing and the demand for housing.
So you mentioned labor, and the labor market has shown some pretty remarkable resilience over the past few years. But our quarterly sentiment survey continues to show the availability of skilled workers as the #1 barrier to growing the company. So where do you see the labor market headed? And are there any early warning signs that you're watching?
I have characterized the labor market overall as stable without being good. And by that, I mean we're getting a bunch of cross currents, but the one thing that I want to caution people from looking at is the thing that in normal times is, in essence, all people look at, or the single best predictor of where we are in the job market and the business cycle is usually how many jobs were created this month. That net payroll employment number has, over the last year, got a bunch of question marks around it because immigration, labor force participation, that number doesn't mean what we always thought it meant. So we've been getting low job creation. Some people interpret that as that's a sign the job market is about to fall apart. That's what usually happens when you see that. But it didn't fall apart. And I usually say at a moment where you have question marks about population growth, you're better off looking at rates. And the 4 horsemen of the truth, I say, are the unemployment rate, the vacancy rate, the hiring rate, and the layoff rate. All 4 of those have been stable for almost a year and a half, but they say different things. The unemployment rate historically is pretty low and has been stable. The hiring rate is extremely low, but has also been stable. But it's so low, it would correspond in the past with the depths of a recession. Yet the layoff rate is also extremely low, and it would be as low as at the peak of a boom. So everybody's scrambling. Is that a sign that things are about to fall apart? Or is that a sign that we're measuring it wrong? The low hiring, low firing, let me get it, environment simultaneously, it's worth noting how weird that is. That's very unusual. You normally have either high firing with high layoffs and firing with low hiring, or you have a lot of hiring because layoffs are really low. That both of those are low at the same time, I think comes from uncertainty. That you've got businesses saying, so much is happening, we're just going to sit on our hands. We're not going to hire anybody. We're not going to let go of the people we have. We just want this to be resolved in the next 6 months. And partly that was from tariffs. Then we got high oil prices. It doesn't feel like that uncertainty is going down anytime soon. So I kind of think we're in a stable but not great labor market environment.
And what could trigger a change in that?
For sure, a popping. If you thought we were in a bubble and the bubble popped, that could trigger a change. If we had a rapid, short-run escalation of trade war, the geopolitics drove the price of oil up even more, negative supply shocks style. But the thing that I would highlight as both the great strength of the economy, but also our greatest risk, is that if you look over 2025 and so far in 2026, for all the talk about AI data centers and the growth of technology and et cetera, the single strongest driver of growth of the U.S. economy has been the relentless uptick of consumer spending. Just regular consumers with decent wage growth spending. That is what has driven the economy over the last year and a half. If that were subject to change, which entirely it could be, the price of oil went up, consumer sentiment is way down, there are different warning signs. If people stop spending because they say, hey, I need to build up a precautionary moat of savings in case something goes wrong, I think the job market would stop being stable.
I heard on Squawk Box this morning, which is where I normally see you, that with the tax returns that came, about 25% were spent on discretionary, 20% on debt, and about half put into savings.
Interesting.
Isn't that fascinating?
Out of the refunds.
The refunds.
They didn't spend it. And is that less spending than normal? That's what I'd need to check.
We'll ask your research team.
Yeah, they'll be able to figure that out. They might figure it out by the end of this lunch.
But it was the savings that surprised me.
Yeah, exactly. If 50% of the tax refund saving was going into savings, that feels higher than normal, perhaps.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be a great sign.
And the checks themselves were higher than usual.
The checks were higher than usual because of the tax cut, some of the tax changes. So we'll have to definitely keep an eye on the progress of the consumer.
The little bit more on jobs. We're anticipating the return of jobs to the Stellantis assembly plant in Belvedere. But at the same time, we've got this threat of low-cost, high-tech Chinese cars. They're not in the U.S. yet. They're in Mexico. So it could be a big disruptor to the automotive market, which is important in your region, important in our region. So what strategies could keep that disruptor at bay, or should we go in whole hog and compete?
Look, some of both. For sure, building walls, if there are technological innovations that are better, faster, cheaper, it's a short-run strategy to say, hey, let's build walls and keep it out and pretend like it's not there. That said, as you know, there's a lot of analysis. Is this real? Is this truly better, faster, cheaper, or is this being heavily subsidized by the government, by industrial policies? I don't know. The 7th District is by far, we're the most manufacturing, but by far the most auto production. The big U.S.-based automakers, as you know, have taken different strategies, some of them trying to partner with the Chinese electric vehicle companies to see if they can introduce that technology into U.S. production. Others saying the demand for pure EV cars is not as big as was advertised, so kind of moving the other way. I don't totally know. If you go to Mexico, or if you go to a lot of the places where they've picked up market share, it's a lower end car than kind of the typical thing that an American consumer thinks of as a vehicle. So I am interested in how it plays out. The strongest thing we have going in manufacturing is the last 4 years, productivity growth has been really strong in the United States, especially in manufacturing. And those improvements are going to be the thing that allows us to keep continuing. Because as I say, it feels like if the strategy is just how do we keep them out, but not adjust or improve our own productivity, in the long run, we're going to be in a tougher spot.
Sure. A reminder that you have a chance to ask questions, and Austan wants to hear what's on your mind. So please take some time to write those questions down now. The staff will pick them up while I ask these final 2 questions. Okay. And they're fun ones.
Uh-oh. Okay, what do you got?
So, season 12 of the Bergstrom State Line Quiz Bowl is currently in play. Right? It's a high school single elimination tournament in which teams of 4 answer questions on science, math, literature, history, fine arts, and current events. So it's down to is it the final 2 schools? Anybody know? I think Keith Country Day School might be defending their title.
This sounds like a big deal in Rockford. Read me the categories again. You said science?
Science,
history,
math, literature, history, fine arts, and current events. And Bergstrom is one of our fine manufacturers here in town. So if you were to field a team against the champions, so you get a team of 4 players. If you were to field a team, which 4 people would you invite to be on Team Goolsbee?
Oh, man. Okay. With Quiz Bowl, as with the Federal Open Market Committee, the key is getting people who think differently than one another. You don't want your team to be a bunch of people who have all the same knowledge. I have an economist co-author, Chad Severson. I would definitely put him on the team. He knows more random facts about every scientific, engineering, and other thing, and that sounded like was at least one of the categories. I got to put my mom. My mom is like thinks the complete right angle to everyone else in the world. So if there is something that you thought, oh, I have no idea, she'd be the who you'd want to phone a friend. I got 2 others. I'm going to take Leslie, my
researcher.
head of regional research. She knows a lot. Can I take you? I'm going to put you.
Because you want my farm
advantage.
Local advantage.
You got farm knowledge.
Yeah. Sure, I'm in.
Her husband at Farm Aid. I was like, yes. Okay, that'd be a pretty good team.
Okay.
That'd be a pretty good team.
Look out, Keith Country Day School. Okay, final question. Hopefully the team's gathering some from the audience. Yep, they are. Okay, this is in the spirit of America 250.
Okay.
Right, we're celebrating 250 years of freedom this year. And I was interested when I found this fact. The Declaration of Independence and Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, right? The preeminent book. Yes, I did not know that. Both published in the same year. So how are our country's founding philosophy and political economy connected?
Wow, this is
like
PhD.
For Professor Goolsbee.
I thought this was going to be the fun one. Wow, whoa. How are they connected? I think they're pretty directly connected, and there were a lot of economic grievances. It's fun to go back and read the Declaration of Independence. And everybody knows the beginning part, and it's like, we hold these truths to be self-evident. And then it's a list of grievances of the stupid king did this, and he taxed us, and it lists like all of these stuff. And many of them are economic in nature. I think what has made the United States the richest major economy in the world is the innovative capacity of our people. And I used to teach at the business school, and I had a student who was from Germany, I think. And I asked him, I taught second years of a 2-year program. And I said, are you going to go back to Germany after graduation? And he said, no, I'm not, because I want to do a startup. And he said, where I'm from, if I go and I say, I'm going to start my own company and it's going to do this, everybody will give me 20 reasons why I shouldn't do it. That'll never work. You're going to embarrass yourself. If that fails, you'll never get a job. And he said, in here, if I tell people, I'm going to start my own company, they're like, that's a great idea. I'll come work for you. Why don't you hire me? Let's do this. And that entrepreneurial spirit is kind of rooted in Adam Smith and capitalism. And I do think that's been a key element to the U.S.'s growth over 250 years. Though the 1776, July the 4th, there's a little bit of controversy of should it have been July the 4th. So they decided they declared independence some days before, and John Adams evidently said, July the 2nd. This is the day that will live forever, on July the 2nd, when we declared independence. But they didn't write it down, so then they wrote it. But the original Declaration of Independence was kept somewhere and it was written on some kind of paper that degraded, and so then no one could read it. So they got all the declarations of independence that we see today, the originals, aren't originals. They're copies, and they went back and they got the people sign how you would have signed it. And evidently, I think there's one of the people who was there at the original, but he wasn't there for the reproduction. So that person isn't listed.
What a bummer.
Yeah, I know. Bummer.
It's like the importance of showing up. Show up.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Where were you?
Yeah.
Where were you? You come back to your 30th high school reunion. Go to the reunion. Yeah.
Look how popular you are.
Yeah, what is
Oh my
this?
gosh, these are questions.
Are they asking how to fill out the survey?
They're saying, Austan, I have a question, and we have 20 minutes.
Okay, 20 minutes.
And
that was her polite way to say, I'm too long, my answers.
You got it. This one is from Kika Young of Forest City Gear. Do you believe the manufacturing momentum we're experiencing in defense, aerospace, robotics, etc., is durable long-term? Are we right to remain cautious with long-term investments?
Yes and yes. Look, if we're going to be in a world filled with more conflict, there's going to be more defense spending. So I do think that there can be sustained business in that space. But given how much uncertainty there is, just back up. If you backed up 3 years, 4 years, and you said, we're going to have the highest tariffs in over a century, we're going to have war in the Middle East, the price of oil is going to be $120 a barrel, but it may be down to 70 within a few months, you would be cautious about making long-term investments until you get a better picture on the uncertainty. And I think you see that reflected in the data.
I think this is another signal of why our quarterly sentiment survey works, because we asked that question, your plans to invest, and it has slightly ticked down, but keep answering those surveys. We are a leading indicator of what's going on out there. This one's from Stephen Platkow at Armory 815. So he's in the service sector, which we saw change in the Consumer Price Index. What industries are most likely to see productivity gains from AI and automation?
What we've seen so far in the uptick of productivity, I like to tell people it can't be more than 10, 15% straight from AI, because AI adoption hasn't been big enough. But that said, if you interpret AI more broadly than just LLMs and ChatGPT, the role of technology in a lot of technology using industries, that's where you've seen the productivity growth increase the most. We hold out hope that where there would be an increase would be in healthcare, because healthcare is such a big share of the economy. I got the list of the leading employers in Rockford metro area. The top 3 are healthcare companies, and that's true in almost every metro area in the United States. So hopefully we will see productivity growth in those spaces, but so far it's been mostly concentrated among the heaviest tech users.
Another from the manufacturing sector, this is from John at Welder Supply. Is copper pricing sending a false signal to manufacturing?
A false signal? Why would it be a false signal?
What's happening with copper pricing? John?
It's up to record high.
Yeah, record highs. That's what I thought. I don't view that as a false signal. That's when you see commodity prices going up. It's like I say, my oversimplifying economists all the time. You see the prices going up. It's a false signal if you're just purely interpreting the high price. That must mean there's tons of demand. Maybe, but it could mean there's a restriction of supply, and I'm willing to bet that a lot of that is the restriction of supply, because you're seeing commodities in many forms, not just petroleum, not just fertilizer, but the farmers are feeling the input costs rising a lot. Manufacturing, you're seeing a lot of input costs rising. So it's a different signal, but not necessarily a false signal.
This next question is about private credit, and I just think the whole private financing is a dynamic that's really changed a lot. Given the rise of rapid growth of private credit and interconnectedness with traditional financial institutions, at what point do rising defaults or liquidity pressures in private credit become a concern for financial stability?
Look, this is an important and a perceptive question. You've seen a big rise of private credit, decrease relatively of just old-fashioned bank credit, direct lending to individual firms. The only thing that, and it's not very transparent because it's private credit, it doesn't oftentimes show up in the official statistics. And the oldest rule of accounting, we got some accounting students here, the oldest rule of accounting is nobody hides good news. So if they're not telling you what the exposures are, that probably means they're not good. That said, private credit has tended to be a little less leveraged. The financial institutions making the private credit have been less leveraged. They have more equity than in some previous rounds, and the interconnection of private credit with other conventional financial institutions might not be as big as certainly than some of the interconnections were before the financial crisis, for example, where one firm going under was threatening to blow up the whole world domino style. You've seen several commercial banks announce that they're going to increase the provisioning for losses. They're going to write down some of the lending that they've been doing to the private credit firms. And that's a sign that the sector is struggling, but it's also a sign that it's not going to come out of the blue. They're trying to
prepare for it.
Yeah, prepare for it.
Speaking of students, this one comes from Victor.
He's one of the accountants.
What do students misunderstand most about the economy, and how can they better prepare themselves for adulthood?
But that second one, I'm the wrong guy to ask how to prepare for adulthood. I'm still trying to prepare for adulthood.
We'll ask your mother.
Yeah, ask my mom. Talk to my mom. The best way to prepare, call my mom. What do we misunderstand, most misunderstood in the economy? If I had to pick one, I would say the lump of labor fallacy, which is the idea that there's a fixed number of jobs in the economy, and that if a technology replaces the tasks that the current jobs are doing, that we will soon all be unemployed and we are doomed. And the thing that you should always remember is for hundreds of years, we've had new technologies. It's not a lump of labor. And we're all out trying to, the speed at which the technologies come in will influence the amount of displacement. But the thing that made us rich is increasing the skill of our workforce, learning new things, being innovative. If you're a student, you can't look at the 249-year history of the United States. It's a straight line in log terms, meaning we grow at a kind of a constant rate over centuries. And you can see the Depression, you could see various dips, but basically if you plot that thing for 250 years, it's up, 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 and it's going to be fine. Just get out and hustle and apply that entrepreneurial spirit, and I'll take the over on that one, not the under.
Can we make that homework for Victor to do that plotting?
Yeah,
250.
and make it in logs.
250 years,
Yeah.
innovation and labor
per
correlations.
capita income.
Okay. We'll see it next time you're here.
Yeah.
Housing affordability. This one comes from Larry at Dickerson Neiman. What are your thoughts on the impact of higher mortgage rates on housing inventory and affordability? How can the Fed help?
Well, Larry, you know exactly what the impact of higher mortgage rates is on demand and on construction. The Fed can only indirectly influence that in the short run because the Fed sets a very short-term interest rate, almost an overnight interest rate, and mortgages are a 30-year interest rate. So the short-term rates influence mortgage rates, but a lot of things influence mortgage rates. They're kind of determined in the market. And as I say, if the Fed can get down inflation, that will make long-term interest rates lower. If the Fed cannot get down inflation, mortgage rates are going to go up because if you have 30 years, what the inflation rate is over the next 30 years makes a huge difference to what the nominal mortgage rate is going to be. We think about that a lot, partly though in the sense that construction and housing is another one of the bellwether industries, very cyclical, very interest rate responsive. So that's also why we pay attention to it.
As employers continue to face workforce shortages, what role do you believe career colleges and training programs play in strengthening our regional community? And this comes from Danielle Harriet at Rockford Career College.
Rockford Career, look, the community college system in the United States is the unsung hero of the educational and workforce preparation. You just look at the data. It's totally obvious. And is it heartbreaking? Maybe it's heartbreaking. The toughest thing is that at exactly the moment when the data show that the premium, the employment and wage premium for getting an associate's degree, for example, has never been higher, is exactly the moment that the funding for getting that is cratering. And so people want to go and can't afford to do it. That's not a good combination. You've seen the career training academies, community colleges, and other programs be more nimble than other forms of labor force preparation. They, in many places, and maybe here in Rockford, get together with the employers and say, if we had people who could do X skill, would you hire them? Yes, we have a shortage. We will hire them right now. Can you lend us the technology to train them? Yes, we can lend you the technology to train them. And they build these pipeline programs that have been very successful. On the board of directors for the Chicago Fed is the head of the Chicago City Colleges. And they've opened in the last year a program that is about skilled nursing, where there's a massive shortage of skilled nursing in the United States overall and in the 7th District in particular. And they're making alliances and cooperating with the local hospitals, where the hospital comes in and says, here's exactly the kind of nursing we need, and it's a high-paying, good job with a career. We're desperate for people. We'll show you the curriculum that we need, and you can have a job, and you can even be paid part-time job while you're a student, and get credit for what you're working on. And I think that's the only answer that we're going to have in the short run to these skilled shortages.
I'll be sure to fill Austan in on Rockford Promise and how our community sends students to school for free.
Nice.
This one is from Dave Soboginski at Midland States Bank. Baby boomer bubble. Has the Fed taken into consideration the effect they have had on the economy, the short-term effect, and long-term as they age out?
Yes. Though remember, in Fed world, we're supposed to be looking at the maximize employment, stabilize prices. So we're very short-run business cycle oriented. That said, we do a lot of research thinking about these longer-term demographic trends and how interest rates are affecting those trends, or how those trends are affecting what the right interest rate should be. I talked a bit about population growth. Many of the things correlated with these factors, though, are the long-run interest rates, if you think about it, not the overnight rates. And the Fed is one component in the mix, but the market has a lot of other determinative factors.
So
I like
many
this dealer's choice.
I know. I want to ask you, should you want to just pick one? Would that be the great way to find the final? Wait.
Always go for the one they're covering up. How do higher education institutions impact the economy when considering success measures?
I feel like you answered that one. Dr. Spearman, was that yours?
Similar. Okay. You should choose.
Okay, here's one.
I'm bad at choosing.
It's hard to come up with that final question.
Yeah. Is this that?
I think this is a good one. It actually comes from Victor again, our Rockford College student.
Victor, fill out the survey.
I know, seriously. If you had total control of the Federal Reserve, what would you implement or change today? It's very...
Okay, first of all, we would move the headquarters of the Fed to Chicago, 230 South LaSalle, and that would be known as the Federal Reserve. But in all seriousness, I have been a big fan of Jay Powell's leadership. I said I consider him a first ballot Hall of Fame Fed chair. We had COVID that did not turn into a financial crisis against all odds. We had the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and a bunch of major bank failures. That did not turn into a financial crisis. And in 2023, we had a large drop in the inflation rate without a recession, which has basically never happened before. And it's done in the context that Fed independence has been under fire and getting publicly bombarded in a way that's close to unprecedented. And that's a pretty good combination. They were slow. I wasn't there yet, so don't blame me. But they were slow to raise rates and contributed to the inflation going up too high coming out of COVID. That's on the downside. With that, I would like us at the Fed, I'm only supposed to speak for myself, not for anybody else. I want us to be cognizant that the job market is basically stable and inflation is going up. And so we're not at this moment in a difficult balancing act between the two sides of the mandate. One side of the mandate is going wrong and the other side is not going wrong. So in the short run, I want us to be cognizant of that. And I remain optimistic, and I was before the inflation started going up, that rates can come down. Still a fair amount. But we've got to see progress on inflation. And if it were up to me, we would kind of adopt that mindset.
Thank you. Thank you for your answers,
yes, thank you
your
for
candor, for being here.
Thank you for those questions.
I also want to take a moment to thank our sponsors who made today possible. So thank you, Illinois State Credit Union, our program sponsor, dessert sponsor, Thayer Energy Solutions, supporting sponsor, Benson Stone Company, and Mindy Joy Photography. Thank you so much. We're grateful for all of your partnerships, for your membership in the Greater Rockford Chamber of Commerce, and for helping us host President Goolsbee today.
I enjoyed that dessert. Who was the dessert sponsor? Thank you.
There.